Hello, everyone. This is Phoenix, the College Success Professor, and I have a new guest starting off this month with my new series on helping students to get ready for the fall semester, or if you're in school for the summer, how to get ready for the summer semester and the new era that we are living in as students, as people, as human beings. So, I have a whole series of people who I will be interviewing to help you as students to prepare for the fall semester, to help you to get ready for the fall semester. And we're going to kick it off with Dr. Stephen Greene, who is a acclaimed success doctor, and I am the college success professor. So we have a
There,
lot of success happening here today.
there's a huge amount of success here.
There's a huge amount of success today. His specialty is focusing on students' academic success. So I'm going to be talking to him about his book, his work, and some tools and resources that he has to offer for you. I have a whole series of questions that I'm going to be asking him. And if you have any questions, definitely feel free to put it in the chat. But let me formally introduce my guest. I'm going to read a brief bio from him. So, Dr. Greene founded Make the Grade, an academic services company based in Philadelphia with a simple mission to provide students and families with actions to maximize their education. In 2015, Dr. Greene published Maximum Education, which I'm sure he'll show you a quick preview of during the course of the interview. There it is. And it became the number one bestseller on Amazon in the education area. It's available now, so definitely check it out after the broadcast. The book provides actions for student time management, information management, and creating a daily success action plan. And the book was expanded into a series of workshops. So if you want to work with Dr. Greene, you can do so. Video courses and one on one coaching for thousands of students. His mission has expanded to Make the Grade podcast as well as Make the Grade Success Community. So there's a lot of offerings that he has for you all. If you would like to work with him, if you would like to learn from him, if you would like to be mentored by him, I'm sure he will tell you all about that through the broadcast. So welcome, Dr. Greene.
Thank you, Phoenix, and thank you, everybody out there. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yes,
Uh,
this is my first time using StreamYard. So
okay.
Dr. Green is mentoring me in that regard because he's an old school podcast pioneer. So we actually met in the same podcasting masterclass. So he's been giving me some tips to like set up. So we're a little bit late, but that's because this is new to me. But Dr. Green, did you want to say anything before we get started with my questions?
Well, I'll just sort of state the obvious, which is that the last 3 months have been pretty wacky, right? I mean, in school, out of school. I mean, the last couple of weeks have been crazy. There's, you don't know what's up or down anymore. But when it comes to school, and I'll probably use this word many times in the next half hour or however long we're going to talk, the one word it always comes back to, the two words are consistency and structure. So, for your guests and for the listeners, if you asked me to just sum it up, I could probably just not talk anymore. You need to get a really good, consistent structure. That's the easiest way to ensure any sort of academic success in a prolonged amount of time. So, we got to deal with whatever else is going on around us, how education is being delivered. You can control what you can control. But in the end, that's a big foundational piece of what I try to show people and teach people. So that's really where it all sort of begins.
Fantastic. So, one of the first questions that I ask my guest is the process that they, or the story of how they transitioned from high school to college. Excuse me, no, that's for students.
Going way
The
back.
the
Never that
process of
far
how they
back.
transition, the process of how they transition from college to their career.
Okay.
So I do have your bio. I know that you've been in education for pretty much your whole career, but could you tell the story of how you came to know that the education was your path in life, and your journey to being an entrepreneur?
I was raised in a house where both my parents were in education. Mother was a first grade teacher. My father was a college professor. And it just seemed like that's what everybody did. When both your parents are basically in the same field, I just assumed everybody's parents were teachers. They aren't, but and we used to, eat dinner, and then my mom would grade papers, and my father would do stuff, and it was just sort of the culture I had growing up. And I think coupling that with there's this born desire to work with people. I always enjoy working with people, coaching, and it's not just academics. I coached all my kids' soccer teams and basketball and baseball, and I just like working with people. So I went to college to get a degree in education, and I double majored education in math. I was going to go teach right away, and then I got an opportunity through my advisor in college to. He had just gotten an appointment at Rutgers in graduate school, and had the ability to bring some assistants with him, some graduate assistants. So I walked away from a potential teaching job and went to graduate school instead. And I figured it'd be a couple of years. I'll get a master's, be a nice jump on my career. Turned into about 6 years. Ended up with a doctorate, which I don't regret any of this. Got a lot more different experience. Ended up getting a lot more into curriculum development and sort of the philosophy of education than probably your average teacher might have. And my last position at Rutgers was working in a program where we identified high school age students who had they were going to graduate from high school, but they had something that really wasn't going to make them completely ready for college. Academically, socially, it went across the board. So we created a program to transition those students, which I oversaw with another person. And that's really what ultimately got me into tutoring. And when that program got lifted, thank you, the governor of New Jersey at the time, uh, then I said, you know what, I'm just going to do this on my own. That was 24, almost 25 years ago, which is kind of incredible. But that's really how it happened. So I went from sort of wanting to be a teacher to kind of wanting to be a college professor to wanting to be kind of a mentor. I did teach for 12 years, 10 in public, 2 in a really nice private school. And that's really how it happened. I think the bottom line is that the reason anybody goes into teaching is because you want to help people. It is,
Hmm.
you know this, Phoenix.
Yep.
To see somebody who has any sort of struggle, and then weeks later, months later, they're almost like a different person. And that I've been doing this so long, but I've never lost the excitement I get from seeing that kind of development in a person, in a student. Doesn't matter what age they are, whatever. But that's the long version of the story. But I wouldn't change it. I didn't plan it this way, but I'm
Right.
glad it happened this way. So
Yeah,
that's
and
the
as
deal.
in working and advising, things never go. And working with many students over the years, I'm sure you know too, things rarely go according to plan. I
No.
think the fact that you were in education is good because you start off. Many students start off with one major or one idea of what they want to do after they graduate, and when they are our age, the path is so far different than where they thought they would be. But we're still in education. When I started, I wasn't quite sure. I was undecided when I started college, and I don't know if I knew at that point that I would be in education and where I am now. So I was
Mm.
completely, directionless. So at least you had, a path, and you're still along
Uh,
that same path.
well, I'll say this. Here's sort of a different perspective, and I probably isn't really what you want to talk about for a length today, but I kind of stayed sort of the same, and
Right,
everything changed around me a
right.
lot more. I mean, the curriculum levels. I mean, anybody remember cooperative learning? Probably not, because it was a fad for 6 years, and then it went away. And ITEP, all these things that kind of come in and out of education, you stay around long enough, it all cycles back eventually. But yeah, look, it is. You don't have to know exactly where you're going to end up when you start. You just have to keep going, and you got to stay committed to your goal. That's
Excellent.
really has nothing to do with education. It's to do with everything. But
Hmm.
for an 18-year-old going into college, 20-year-old, that's the key. Is you're going to get your setbacks. Everybody does. But you got to focus on the prize at the end.
Couldn't have said it better. And that is definitely related to what we are talking about,
Oh yeah.
guidance and advice, and our years and years of experience and knowledge from working with students and being, human beings. What you learn, I think your point was that everything around you changed, but that's going to happen no matter where you are. So learning to adapt, you starting your own business and transitioning to be an entrepreneur is a good example of adapting to, the world changing. And
You have
if
to.
nothing else, the world is definitely changing as we speak. So having that ability to adapt and grow and, adapt to those changes and move along the path is important. So let me get into my first question, which is, your specialty with regard to academics and time management and organization with regard to being a student. Because we're going through these transitions here, both in the real world and also in the college world. We had to do a lot of transitioning last semester from face to face learning for the most part to online learning. So many schools are deciding, many schools have decided, some are going to be online, some are going to be face to face, or so they hope.
Hmm.
So, do you have any advice or information on any of your areas of specialty to help what students can do now to start preparing for that transition to their careers in college or their academic lives in college?
Of course, I have a lot of ideas. I would say, with the way I approach things, I compartmentalize them into number one, how you manage your time. And sometimes that's an adventure for college kids because they typically have come from a greater structure in high school to more freedom in college, especially if they live on campus. So you got to know how to manage your time. You can't sleep till 2 o'clock or party all night, sleep till 2 o'clock, and then, whatever. Number two is you have to manage the information. Depending on what course load you have, the complexity of your classes, so on and so on, you may have a lot of information that you have to manage. So, and then the third piece is you just got to get it done every single day. You do not want to go through college constantly behind. Unlike high school, where you have a quiz every week or tests every other week, college, I had a class in college, the entire grade was one final at the end. And what's common is, maybe a midterm and a final or a paper and a final. So you end up having a much greater proportion of your assessment in much less number of things. So, but anyway, manage your time, manage your information, have a daily success action plan, and these are all, like, I could drill down on all of these for a week, but broad stroke, that's what somebody wants to look at. The other side of it is structure. And the way I teach it, I've identified five structures you got to worry about. There's a physical structure. You got to kind of know, you got to have a room to study in that's quiet. There's a time structure. You got to know when to do it. There's an academic structure. There's an accountability structure. And then the last one is called, I call the support structure. Because everybody's going to need help at some point, maybe small, maybe large. And you want to know where those support systems are before you need them. You don't want to be seeking out 11 o'clock at night, the night before an exam. How can I get help with this particular subject? So, between the information, time management, and daily action, and all the structures, put them together, you got a really solid system.
So could you say that again? I was taking notes actually,
Oh, all right. Hey,
with the five structures.
good. That's good. Okay, so the five
So I might
structures
even put it in the
are. It's
chat.
good. Yeah, write it down. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
Number one,
physical. I have physical.
physical,
Hmm.
um, time, academic, accountability, and support. And I always do them in that
That
order.
is.
Don't ask me to do them in a different order,
Should they be actually done in that order,
No, it
or
doesn't
just
matter
as
what
long
order
as
you
they're all
do them in, but
covered?
it kind of makes sense because, listen, you could have everything else in place, but if you don't have anywhere to study that's quiet and not conducive, you're not going to get anything done, right? You could have a great quiet
Yeah.
room, but if you wait till 3 in the morning when you're exhausted, you could have both of them, but not know what to study. Or maybe you went to, I don't know, whatever calculus class, and you just didn't understand what they were talking about. That's the academic. Accountability is really a more of a nebulous one where who are you going to be holding yourself accountable to? Right? Your parents may not be there to push you. Your roommate isn't gonna. So this is where you have to develop accountability to yourself. Right? You're paying to go to
Hmm.
college, or somebody is.
Right.
And then the support one is more of a as needed. But yeah, these are I've talked about these things for years, and I always think maybe there's a better system, a newer system, a more updated system. I've never found one. I just keep coming back to the same
Yeah.
things. And
If I
some are
think
more
about this,
important. Yeah, some are more important in
sorry.
individual cases than others. You know, sometimes the time is because look, a lot of kids go to college and have to have jobs. You know, or
Hmm.
they're on sports. You know, I've tutored, mentored a lot of kids who are on college sports. That's a big time commitment. Um, so, but really, the message I'd like to convey is you got to know these things ahead of time and try to establish the positive habits and patterns beforehand, like early. Like you don't want to wait till halfway through your junior year. Be good at this stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's
If I
easy to
think about
say, not necessarily easy to do.
right, if I think about the students who I had worked with this past spring semester, I think all of those areas were areas where they had either difficulty throughout the whole transition to online learning or at some point just being able to, for example, one of my students, moving back home, she had all of her brothers and sisters were also at home. So there was no, she had to figure out exactly where she was
Right.
going to do her
Well,
work. So
that's
she
your
bought like a
structural
portable,
piece, right?
yeah, she had to bring like a portable desk where she kept everything, and she would transport it from room to room because different people had to use the different
Hmm.
spaces in our house for different reasons. So definitely the structural piece was for sure.
Well, I think the assumption is hopefully that the last 2.5 months are the aberration, not the norm, right? But the principles didn't change. It's like I was saying,
For
everything
sure.
changed around us, or me at least. Um, we're still learning the way people learn, how we got to do it. That didn't change March 14th, or at least in my case when everything shut down here. Um, but the way we had to deal with it did, right? So we had to create new structures. We had to do new time management. We had to be accountable in a different way. We had to get our academics different way. So everything, it makes sense when you think about it,
Yeah, it
how
does.
it all blends together. I think another piece, this really doesn't have to do with education as much, but there's a maturity element as well, right? You send somebody off to college, yeah, they're going to exercise their freedoms. There's nothing wrong with that. College is a place they're supposed to have fun as well. But you always got to bear in mind that your job is your education, right? And everything I try to teach, everything I pontificate about, is to help people to do that as easily and as successfully as possible. So that's
Right.
the goal.
And like I said, I'm just so intrigued by your 5 steps. Be, yeah, that's like it's perfectly broken down, and that's probably because you have years
I
of
was trying to
experience.
find I was trying, maybe
Uh,
you can do this better than me. I'll make a contest. Anybody out there listening, if you could find a way to get those letters
a
and make
mnemonic,
a
yeah.
word like I don't know, whatever. Uh, I can't think of a word.
Yeah, we'll work on it. We'll work on it. Definitely, if you can think of
RG
something.
Biv, right? You know what RG
Yeah,
Biv
yeah,
is? The
yeah.
colors of the rainbow, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
can get a word at A, whatever. There's two A's. There's an S. There's a C. It just doesn't make a good word. But
Yeah, yeah.
I will give an autographed copy of my book. Anybody can come up with a good mnemonic device to get those 5 things in place. I've
Yeah,
tried. I
so
can't.
yeah, if you come up with the replay, if you check us on the replay,
Yeah.
definitely we'll
Yes.
still that offer will stand.
Offers on the table. I said it
Yeah.
publicly.
For sure, and especially for students who are it's their first year in college,
Absolutely.
as you mentioned, transitioning from the high school to the college experience, where there's often one of the big factors which you mentioned is that there is a lack or a lesser amount of assessments that they're
Yeah.
going to be graded
And they
on.
don't know. They
So
don't usually tell you that. That's not
mhm.
like in the manual, so to speak.
Well, they do tell you. It's just that students don't know to read the
Right.
syllabus.
Well, I was gonna say it's right. Right.
Yeah, so for that's tip number 3 if we're on the tips today. One of the things that students need to do, new students who are going to college, is to read the syllabus for your class. Each of your classes, your instructor
When
usually has a guide for how you're going to be
when I
graded, what
when I was
each week is
teaching
going
it
to look like.
when I was teaching in college, I had the students sign a paper that vouched that they had read and understood the syllabus. And most of them just signed it.
Yeah.
Didn't even read the paper
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
what they were signing. But that way, like later on, oh, I didn't know the midterm was 45% of the grade. I'm like, hey, it's right here. You signed it.
Yep.
You said you
Yep.
understood it. And it wasn't a
Yep.
legal thing. It wasn't like I was getting sued or anything dumb like that. It was just it was accountability, right? I wanted them to understand this is your stuff. You got to take responsibility.
Yep. And faculty over the years, one of the things that they are slightly irked or even very irked about is that if you ask a question of them that is clearly, you know,
Yeah, they should
delineated
know
in
the
the
answer to.
syllabus.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's clearly written in the syllabus, they're going to know that you didn't read the syllabus. So, first thing, first week of class, or even usually before classes begin at some institutions, especially if you're online, the syllabus for the course is posted in whatever learning management system that your school is using. So, even over the summer, for those of you who have already registered for your fall semester, check out the syllabus for the class. It not only is important so you have an idea of what's going to happen in the class, it's an idea of, if this is something you want to take during this first semester, because usually most schools have an add drop period. So if you check out the syllabus and it scares you, or it's a lot of work and you think it's going to be overwhelming, then maybe you might want to, see if there's another class that you could take, especially during that first semester. What are your thoughts about the types of classes that students should take during their first semester in college?
Well, I given the statistic that I think it's like 60, two-thirds roughly of students who go to college change their major at least once. There may be
Hmm.
an updated stat on that. That's the one that always gets thrown out.
Yeah.
I'm not really in the college counseling business in that sense, but I would say don't pigeonhole yourself. Because college can get expensive. Let's just talk economics for a second, right?
Hmm.
Let's say you do a year in a major, and then you decide to change majors, which is fine. It's your life. Well, maybe now you got to go to college for 5 years instead of four, or four and a half instead of four. That might be a $20,000 difference in cost. Maybe less, maybe more, but it could be significant. So normally my stock advice is use your freshman year and take classes that you feel you're going to be able to handle. Maybe even take classes that are almost the same as high school. Like if you've had an advanced like calculus in high school, maybe take calculus in college. It'll pad your GPA a little bit, but more importantly, it'll give you a chance without nearly the same amount of stress to get comfortable with the new normal of the college lifestyle. I mean, you probably got to take at least one or two classes in some major, and then the rest is usually gen ed or
Hmm.
general studies, whatever they call it in that particular university. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Make your life easier your first semester, maybe even your whole first year. Spread it out. Give yourself time to establish good habits, and try some things. Maybe there's a major you never even thought about, but don't do a major because it
Hmm.
sounds good. I mean, that's
Hmm.
probably not. I mean, that's not a reason to do it. Um, yeah.
Yeah, your point is actually true. A lot of the reasons that students, and your statistics are also true, that students who have difficulty figuring out what their major is or change majors often are often spending that extra money because they haven't, secured all the credits that they need for whatever major they finally decide on. So changing your major can be definitely costly. So if you're going into school like I did, and you're not really sure what you want to major in, you might want to start using the time this summer to start exploring exactly, maybe take a class this summer. Summer two is still an option for students. Take some classes and don't just be willy-nilly about, oh, I'll just figure it out while I'm in school,
It's
because that's going to
also
cost you some extra money.
classes or even volunteer. If you think you like animals, I don't know, volunteer at the zoo. If you think you like accounting, maybe try to get an internship in a bookkeeping office or an accounting office, because the real life in a job is not the same as it sounds in some fairy tale ish, just thinking about it kind of thing. Same with teaching, by the
Hmm.
way. Teaching sounds
Yeah, the
great. Yeah, I
theory
stand in
and
front of a room,
practice.
everybody loves me, students are all listening, like not how it is. Not where I taught anyway. Yeah, but that's the summer's a great time to try that. Volunteer, get a job, if you can in the field. Plus, it's a good resume builder, right? It's
Yeah,
always good to have experience. No excuse for that, or no substitute for that.
right, for sure. So I'm gonna get back to my list of questions because I did veer off. I warned
Yeah,
you I might do that.
that's okay. Right? This is about spontaneity.
Yeah. So, from working with the students that you work with who are in college or about to go college, what's the most common misperception or misunderstanding that students have regarding, one of your initial pillars, time management?
Well, I think they grossly underestimate how much time they've got to put in.
Could
I,
you say that one more time? How much time they have?
I think they underestimate, and in some cases grossly underestimate, how much time slash work they're going to have to do at the next level. Um, it, especially when you get a kind of a higher end, a kid who gets like a 3.9 in high school and doesn't really work very hard for it. There's always people like that, and then they figure out I'll go to college, it'll be the same, and then they just don't. It's just not lined up. I think the other side of it is not planning ahead long term, because if we go back to the idea that you start college, you got a midterm 6 weeks later. It's right on the syllabus. Midterm, I don't know, what, October 23rd.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's easy. I don't have anything to do for September now. I can party the whole month of September, right? Yeah, what's the difference? One more day. I'll do it tomorrow. Well, all of a sudden now it's October 11th, and now you got to learn 4 weeks worth of stuff, potentially, that you just kind of let slide, right? So this goes back to kind of the self-discipline and the self-accountability. That's that other A that I can't figure out how to put into a word. But that's the biggest thing I see.
So when you are working with students, if they are about, if you know they've had that issue possibly in high school, and you're worried about them, or their parents are worried about them being able to transition to college where it's not as much oversight or guidance or support, what are some strategies or tips that you have them do? Like, like you said, you don't want to get way into the semester and you're behind. Like, what are
No,
some things that they do at the beginning of the semester?
the simplest and easiest thing is always the basic thing that everybody knows but just doesn't do, which is just get a calendar, get a book, write stuff you have to do down, and then schedule it out. I mean, that is not rocket science. That is not some incredible epiphany that I woke up one day and said, "Oh my goodness." It's all about planning. It's all about planning ahead and foreseeing what you're going to have to do. And the way I break it down in my book is I break it into two categories: short term and long term. So in my world, short term is something that's due tomorrow. In high
Mm-hmm.
school, this is more relevant because you've got class every single day generally, right? But so to me, short term would be, okay, it's Monday. I just had class. I got class on Wednesday or whatever. Short term would be what you have to do in between class one and class two.
Mm-hmm.
Long term is anything that extends beyond that. So maybe there's a project or a test or a paper, or I don't know, whatever. That's a week out, 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out. So that's how you want to categorize it. And then the way you approach it is by just planning. So the shorter term stuff has to be a higher priority. It just makes sense, right? It's due
Right.
sooner. But you always want to chunk out the other stuff, right? In education, we talk about chunking a lot,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically, I'm sure you know, but taking a big job and turning it into small tasks. So you take something that
Right.
might take 6 hours and you turn it into, whatever, 24, 15-minute blocks. And you do a couple of them every day. So the people, I'll almost say this in the anti-negative. The people who don't get themselves in trouble are the ones who don't put things off to the last minute. And the only way you're not going to put stuff off to the last minute is by planning ahead. And you can only plan ahead if you know what's coming. And this is where that
Exactly.
information management, time management, all the things I just say a gazillion times over and over come in. But to answer your question, where do people get in trouble? Is when they don't anticipate or they underestimate the amount of work they have to do or the amount of time it's going to take them to do it.
I'm going to ask
I
you.
see that a lot. Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a personal piece of advice because I
Mm-hmm.
know all this and I have an 11-year-old
Uh-oh.
in sixth grade who I've been homeschooling. Pray for me. Um, I don't know why he is just so, they gave them planners at the school. The 9-year old, he'll do it. He'll write everything that he has to do down in a planner. The 11-year old is just so, that's the first step that starts off everything you just explained. I don't know why he is so adverse to writing down what he is supposed to do. Any guidance, any tips, any advice for me to help me?
Uh, well, let me. The caveat here is I am not going to tell anybody how to parent uh, their own
I'm his
children.
homeschool teacher.
Okay, there you go. So, but speaking homeschool teacher to homeschool teacher, um, listen, there's a lot of ways to accomplish this. Some kids can get away with it without writing it down. I
He
mean,
cannot.
let's be fair, right? You don't. It's not like if you don't write your work down, you'll never get it done. So, the negotiation I would have is say, listen, okay, you don't want to write it down. What is your system? You tell me what your system is because you have to have a system.
Okay.
Well,
I'll
it's up
try
to you,
that.
mom. They're probably gonna say, I know what it is. But that's I would I'm a lot. I didn't talk about it yet today, and we may not get into it. But I am very big on a student taking ownership or responsibility or self accountability because we're really college is going to train you to do whatever you're going to do, right? But really, it's a proving ground for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically, you're out of college, so 22, 23 at the latest. You got 30, 40 years, maybe more. You're going to be running a business or in the workforce or professional, whatever you're going to end up doing. And it's even more important there. You know, you want to get fired from a job because you didn't do something your boss asked you to do, or your supervisor, or if you're a doctor and you forget to I don't know, do something and you get so there's the repercussions are different. But my advice to you would be, put it in his court.
All right. I
Listen,
will. I
I
will take
know
it.
this. A really famous author told me this is a good way to do it. But I get it. You don't want to do it that way. That's okay. You're your own person. But what
I'll
is
play
your
him this
system?
recording.
Right, right. You can just play this for him. But what is your system? You got a better idea? Let's hear it.
All right. I will
And
try
then
it.
whatever it is, you got to do it every day because it's still about consistency.
Right. And a system,
But
having a system. Right.
but I think common sense will tell you. I don't care if you're 11 or 9 or 100. If you don't know what you have to do, you're not going to get it done.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
Let me know how that works out.
Yeah, I will. So that brings me to my next question, because I know you do also work with parents in your work. So when you are working with parents of the college age students, and perhaps the student didn't have a great semester, or in a worst case, they were on a scholarship and they got a bad GPA and the scholarship is in danger of being lost. What advice or guidance do you give to parents in those situations?
Well, A is what are you going to take to correct this, right? You need to define how you're going to get back to what your desired state is. But it's a tough one because there's many different ways people parent, right? You got like kind
Mm-hmm.
of the strict taskmaster. Hey, you failed out. I wasted my money. You got sort of the coddling type, like it's okay. You're discovering. Um, but I think the advice I'll give a parent is, it comes back to this is where the responsibility and accountability comes in, and the support, right? What what if we don't understand what caused it to get to that point? It's probably just going to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
But it may have been laziness. It may have been partying too much. I mean, let's be honest. That happens.
Right.
It may just maybe the classes were too difficult. Maybe they were doing something else. Maybe they were in a club and it just got away from them. Not always bad reasons.
Right.
Sometimes they are. But I think the first thing I say to parents is you need to understand why this happened. If your goal is to correct it, if your goal is to get little Phoenix back on track, you need to understand why they got off track to begin with. And then we got to try to get corrective measures to make sure that doesn't happen again. Or other side of it is more oversight, more accountability. Maybe the parents say, look, first semester freshman year, you did on your terms, you got a 1.8, you're going to lose your scholarship. Now we're doing it our way, and we want to check your work every night. Or, whatever.
Right.
Uh, but you do walk that line because I think part of what every parent wants to see is a child develop independence while they're at
Mm-hmm.
college. I think that's part of the reason to go.
Yeah.
It's hard to sit back and see a kid flounder, and no parent wants to see their child struggle. So it's sometimes it's a tough love thing, but again, that would be my counsel. We need to determine the cause so we can prevent it from happening again and fix it.
For sure. So I'm gonna um, ask a question that I had a group of students talk about when I was asking them about, some of the difficulties they had when they transitioned from high school to college, and that
Hmm.
is basically the format of. So we talked about the fact that in college you have less assessments than you do in high school. Another thing that they told me that they struggled with was the format of the actual classes. So being expected to sit in a lecture, sometimes if you have a class just one day a week, you have a 3 hour class and the professor is basically lecturing for the full, yeah, for the full 3 hours
And
or
you're
2 hours and 50 minutes. So being able to, get the, discipline to sit through and pay attention for that duration of time, being able to take notes and do everything that you need to do in order to be successful in that type of environment, because professors, they're experts in their field, they can go on and on about their discipline, but how do you, as a student who may not be interested or be as knowledgeable about what they're talking about, how are you successful in that type of a class?
yeah. That's first of all. Let me say this: I'm not a fan of sitting through a class like that either. I have an okay attention span. There's only so much you can put into the bucket at a time, so to speak.
Right.
Um, I could go. I think. Okay, let me answer it a couple different ways. Number one, if you know it's coming, you're going to just have to deal with it, right? If the first week of the class, this teacher just goes off and lectures for 2.5 hours, it might just be a very long semester in that class. That is what it is. But that doesn't change the fact that you have to deal with it. So there's an acceptance of just the reality. I think what you also need to do is prepare, right? One of the ways that you can maximize, or at least maximize the potential of succeeding in college or high school, really, is to be prepared coming into the class. So if the teacher says, okay, uh, next week we're going to talk about the archaeology of the Aztecs, read this chapter of the book, and you don't read the chapter of the book, the lecture is a lot less meaningful, whether you
Right.
find it interesting or not. So some of this is on the student. You got to take care of what you have to take care of. Um, I think just from a physical standpoint, just sitting 2.5 hours listening to somebody is not easy.
Right.
But I think the workaround is get a good way to take notes. Try to cull what's important, and but really I think the best advice is what I just said a few minutes ago, which is come into class prepared.
Right.
Um, I had a teacher like that too. In fact, I won't mention the name of the professor. I had a professor in grad school, and I got our roster with the classes on it. I was out a couple days before, whatever, and I showed it to one of my friends. He goes, "Oh, you have Jones." Wasn't his name, but I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." He goes, "That guy's horrible." And you know how we know? Because he's the author of the book you use in the class. It's just a little bit of advice to college kids: do not take a class where the textbook is written. The author of the textbook is your professor. Yeah, it's kind of cool, like to write a college book. I never did, but my book gets used a lot of places, but not in universities. But yeah, so I had this class, and the teacher, professor, had written the book, and all he really did was almost literally read out of the book. It was excruciatingly boring. Um, I don't. I guess I learned something. I couldn't really tell you one thing I learned in that class. Now it was 30 something years ago, but yeah. So it's just a little sidebar. You may not know that coming in, but yeah. I think the only other thing I would say is this. Um, and I think my theme is consistent. Is everything kind of links together somehow. There's this sort of chain of events, right? If you're in a certain major and you have to take a certain class, theoretically, it's either a building block class, an intermediate class, or an advanced class. And if it's a building block class, there might be stuff in there you may not think is important right then, but it may be next year or your junior year or your
Mm-hmm.
senior year when a
Mm-hmm.
more advanced class is going to really drill down on it. Not like a, almost like a, like a 400 level. I'm not sure, these schools got different coding
Yeah.
systems anymore. But so something that might seem irrelevant or unnecessary or just is just not resonating with you at all, October your freshman year may become more important later on. I don't want to say will
Right.
because I don't know, but it's just a little different perspective.
For sure. Great advice. So one follow-up question to that answer.
Yes.
You mentioned being able to take good notes. Do you are you an advocate of various noting systems like the Cornell notes, or do you have your own
Uh,
way that you
I
tell
love the
students
Cornell system,
how
and if
best to?
anybody doesn't know what that is, we can describe it. Yeah, I mean, I could. You want to see some? Yeah, I teach in this book 7 different ways to take notes, and one of them is Cornell. And for those of you who don't know, it sounds like you're
Great.
familiar with the Phoenix, but Cornell would be the night before class, in some way, shape, or form, you make an outline of what you expect to be in the class, right? Then the next day during the lecture, you would more supplement those notes, so you're not furiously writing, as opposed to just pretty much transcribing almost what the professor or lecturer is saying. Um, it goes back to preparation, right? It goes back to being prepared for what's going on. Um, I think it's hard just from a neurological standpoint to simultaneously listen and write because you're always, it's off, right? You're writing what you heard 5, 10 seconds ago. Not that many people, not everybody can write really quickly, or at least not with legibly.
Right.
Um, so it's like you're listening now, but you're writing what you heard 3 seconds ago. And you're trying to keep up, and the teacher. So it's hard. So anything you can do to shortcut it or block it out, and that's I'm trying to find one real fast in here. This is actually my working copy of the book I'm using here. But like, I'll give you an example if I can show you. Like this is an outline. I don't know if this is going to work, but this is your basic outline, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of indented. It's
I'll make.
probably not coming across real well to our audience. Um, and then this is just a different model. It's the exact same information, but in sort of what they call a radial model. Here's something similar, what we call a spoken wheel. You can also do like a concept map. Where's my concept map? Something like that. So these are all the exact same information as this, just much more visual. We're not really here today to talk about what kind of learner you are: visual, kinesthetic, auditory, etc. But most people are visual learners, right? So if you can make your notes visual, and pictures, diagrams, squares, arrows are much more visual than just prose text. I do a workshop, if I can plug it, where I actually teach people multiple ways to take notes live. So what I do is I do like a pre-canned lecture, about
Uh,
5 minutes, and I do it online now, although it's a little harder to manage online. But and then okay, we're going to do this one old school. We're going to do this by indentation method. We'll say, okay, I'm going to read you the exact same lecture, but now I want you to do it by concept map. We're going to do a third time. We're going to do that one with the circle and the spokes and things. And then I say, look, you don't know when you're going to use which. It's like a toolbox. Sometimes you got to use the Phillips head screwdriver, sometimes the one. So the more techniques you have, the more tools you have, then when the time comes, you pick the one that's the most advantageous. But always keep in mind, why does anybody take notes? What's the purpose of taking notes, right? It's a semi-rhetorical question because the answer, well, because that's what we had in class. The answer really is because you want to think about what was important in the class that you think you need to know carrying forward, right? So to just rewrite everything a teacher says isn't necessarily the best strategy, and it's not the easiest strategy. It's all about kind of distilling it down to the essential. Basically, notes are just an outline that you have to do live, if you think about it. Outline's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing, except in outline you don't have the pressure of um, doing it in real time as someone's dictating it. So, what a lot of people do now is they just record the class. You take your phone and and then later you go and listen to it, but it just doubles your amount of time you got to deal with. But it's not a bad technique.
For sure. So I'm gonna do two more questions. We have 10 minutes. I think that
Okay.
should. Uh, we also have class later on this evening. So
Yes, we do. Yes, we have a class. See, you never stop learning,
yes,
people out
yep. You
there.
never stop learning.
Phoenix and I
Exactly.
are in a
Exactly.
class tonight. Workshop, I think, technically is what they're calling it, but still. Yes,
Yeah.
you
The
never
last
stop
week.
learning.
The last week of class.
Yeah, it is. We are graduating tonight. That is true.
So my penultimate SAT word question
Ooh,
is
okay.
what does self motivation and self discipline pay the work that you do as student? Talked about to yourself, but what does because you mentioned earlier habits. Sometimes you don't feel like reading a textbook. You just don't feel like going to class.
Hmm.
What In what ways do you help students with those two, self discipline and self motivation?
Well, if you haven't picked it up already, I am really big on doing it because it's important to you, right? I can coach anybody, but I'm not living their life, right? I can try to motivate people. Ultimately, they have to decide that it's important enough to them. I see my role as I can give you a million tools, I can give you a million techniques, I can coach you, I can look over your shoulder, but the way I try to motivate is by the end result. Let's look 5 years out. Where do you want to be? You can't look a week ahead when you're in college. I mean, you need to in terms of the minutia of getting everything done. But it's like, okay, I want to be an engineer. Great. Awesome. What's it going to take? It's going to take four whatever years of work. We know that going in, right? You want to be a teacher, you got to go to college 4 years. You want to be a doctor, it's like 10. I don't know, whatever. You want to be a lawyer. So you have to understand that when you walk into college freshman year, you have a decently long road ahead of you, right? But why are you doing it? You're doing it because you have a giant goal that may change and it may drift and morph and whatever. But that's really to me that like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is what's your end game. So when you get off course, what's going to bring you back, right? And everybody slips up. I'm not going to tell you I did perfectly in college myself or grad school because people get distracted, and some days you have different priorities. But I always had, and I honestly can say this, I always knew what my end game was. And I always knew a year where I wanted to be, 2 years, 5 years, in terms of why I was doing the academic pieces. So my little kind of like locker room Newt Rockley speech to these kids is, listen, you're heading off to college, but it's not where you're going to do your first day or your second day. It's where you're going to end up after your last day. And essentially, going to college is learning what you need to learn academically, learning skills, networking, meeting people, getting connected. That's a piece of it too that we haven't not really where we are going, but it's part of it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
when you come out, being employable or being a professional, right? Because someday you're going to go to a job interview or you're going to start a business, you're going to try to get clients, and you got to present that you know what you're talking about. So if you want to be an engineer and you go to I don't know whatever Phoenix's engineering firm and hey Steve, tell us what you learned in college. I mean, these are questions they may ask you, right? So it's all about the big goal. That's go win one for the Gipper kind of speech is what's your big picture? Because if you get off course, that's okay. Most people do at some point, but how do you bring it back, right? How do you bring it back to where you want to end up? And I think that's really the key. Um, Day to day, it's about habits, it's about the structures, it's about the time management. But week to week, month to month, semester to semester, it's about the big picture.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know if it went out. My internet said it's unstable. I don't know if they got all that,
Oh,
but
that was my best speech I ever gave in my
hopefully
life.
they did.
Yeah, I hope so
No,
too.
that I
I don't know if I
it was
could ever
toward
say
the
that
end. It
again.
was
Big picture. It's all about the
hopefully it
big
was, yeah, it was
picture
great. It was
goal.
great. Yes.
Sounded good on this end. I
Quick
hope
recap.
everybody out there liked it. But yeah,
Yeah. Hopefully. Um so I do
now let's get
before
to
my
that
internet
last
completely
question
goes
quickly.
out. Yeah, I
Everyone's
know.
not happy
My
with our
last question is for you to,
discussion.
yeah, plug away about all the products, all the
Okay.
services, all the ways that people
Well,
could
first of all, if anybody
work
wants to
for
get a
you
hold of
with
me,
you.
which I listen, I would enjoy any kind of feedback. Makethegrade.net, www.makethergrad.net. It's kind of right here. Everything I do is branded through makethegrade.net, except the name of the book, because I didn't want to call the book Make the Grade because I wanted something a little more sort of powerful that way. My email is sgreene, Sgreene, at guess what? Makethegrade.net. I am, for an old guy, all over social media. I'm trying. There you go. Thank you, Phoenix. I do a live stream a couple times a week on educational topics and tips and things like that. That typically goes out into my social. I'll plug one thing if you don't mind, and actually I want to talk to you about this offline because I want to get you involved. In September, I'm going to do an online educational summit, and it's designed for two types of people. One is exactly who we're trying to talk to today: students starting a school year as strongly as possible. I'm going to bring in a whole bunch of speakers on a whole bunch of topics that are going to help you to do that. And the second thing it's geared for is parents who are trying to support their students, their children, to do that. So I don't have a date for it yet. I'm playing around with late August, early September time frame. It won't be later than that. It won't be much earlier. But more on that later. So I'll let you know because I want to invite you to speak at it. But we'll share it with your audience when the time comes.
Sounds
And yeah, if you want my
great.
book, hey, look, they're available.
And
It's
don't
make
forget
it.
the giveaway for whoever can figure out
That's
a
right.
mnemonic that
That's
goes
right.
with it,
That's right. The
with the
five
five
structures.
with the five
The book
structures.
actually has its own website, which is maximeducation.net, but you can also get through it. The only other thing I would plug, if somebody wants support, ongoing support, I have an online community. You can get to it on the website. It's a 24/7 support. It is there to help students and help parents. I got a lot of college kids in it. Sometimes they'll just join for 4 or 5 months while they have class. That's fine. It's month to month. So check that out. That was the last
Well,
question.
thank. Yep, that was the last
Oh,
question, and
that wasn't
we
even
have
a
four
question.
minutes
That
to.
was like whatever, a statement.
I
So
wanted to make sure we got it in within the hour, and
that's
I,
good.
yeah, and I also wanted to do my little plug
There you
too.
go.
Um, I'm sure that is way too long, but I this, like I said earlier when I kicked off, that this is the you are the first in a host of people that I'm going to have on this month, specialists, experts, students, faculty, speaking on topics of how students can prepare for the fall semester, because we don't know what's going to happen. You didn't expect that. You were going to transition from face-to-face classes to in-person classes. Excuse me, from in-person classes to online classes in the spring semester. So we don't know what's going to happen for many students. You don't know even what the fall semester is going to look like. Colleges are still deciding whether they're going to be face-to-face or online. So I am having a webinar on Thursday, June 18th at 6 o'clock. It's called Countdown to College, the COVID Ready Edition. I will put actually that link in the chat in some way. Like I said, this is all new to me. The StreamYard wonderfulness. So I will put that in the chat, and I'll be promoting it all month. Next week we have two students from various universities, local and not local, and we also have an expert talking about how to fully fund your education if you are still in high school and looking to apply for the next school year with all the changes with the SAT and the ACT. She'll be talking about that, and she'll be talking about college admission in general. So definitely stay tuned next week. I'd like to thank Dr. Greene again for being with me for this hour. I learned a lot. I took notes. Like I said, I was taking notes. I'm going to have to get the book
Thank
too.
you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get the book too. For those of you who know me, I work in the academic support services office at LaSalle University, and I think that is something, one of the resources that we need to have in
I
our
think they should
toolbox, as
just
you
it should be
mentioned.
given to every freshman there.
Yeah, it's definitely a good
Not because
resource
they don't
for
have good
students to
skills,
have.
but I really honestly feel it's a functional book. It's all about
Yeah.
using it, plugging in with it, and yeah, yep,
All right. Well, thank you so much again, Dr. Greene. I will see you at 8 o'clock when
that's right.
class starts tonight. And we will definitely, like you mentioned, I'll definitely be interested in working with you for that project that you mentioned. And again, thank you all for tuning in. Definitely check out the Countdown to College COVID Ready Edition. Definitely buy Dr. Greene's book. Check out his website, makethegrade.net. So we will see you next week, or if not sooner. Thank you.